Introduction. The TMSS Medium is a rugged modular shelter made by Drash, recognized worldwide as a leader in the integration of shelter, utilities, tactical mobility, and information management. Setting up the TMSS Medium requires 4 personnel and takes as little as 15 minutes once the shelter leaves the trailer bed. You should have also received a training manual with pictures that correspond to this video. Always read and follow the instructions as you set it up. This video will help you learn how to select and prepare a site, unload properly, avoiding injury to you or the equipment, set up the shelter, secure trailer for operation, connect the cables and equipment, and fuel the genset and system power-up. It also briefly covers striking the TMSS Medium. Trailer setup, selecting a site. Select a dry, level 32 by 23 foot site that is clear of obstructions and hazards. Securing trailer for operation. Take note, the TMSS Medium trailer must be level to prevent equipment damage. Genset exhaust fumes must be directed away from the shelter, the trailer, and personnel. After positioning the trailer in an operational position, engage the 2 handbrakes. Lower the 2 rear stabilizer legs, placing them as close to the ground as possible. Remove the 2 assembly pins holding the wheel skid plate assembly to the storage post. Note, before disconnecting the tow vehicle, secure the wheel skid plate assembly. After removing the 2 assembly pins, raise the tongue jack post. If either the wheel or the skid plate does not clear the ground, raise the tongue jack assembly with the tongue jack hand crank. Lift the wheel skid plate assembly up into the tongue jack extension until the wheel skid plate clears the ground, and insert the upper assembly pin in the extension pinhole. Insert the lower assembly pin to secure the wheel skid plate assembly to the tongue jack extension. Rotate the tongue jack hand crank to lower the tongue jack post until the trailer is supported by the wheel or skid plate. Check that the bubble level on the trailer indicates that the trailer is level. If the ground is level, chalk the front of the left wheel and the back of the right wheel. If the ground is not level, chalk the tires on the 2 lowest points. Take note, if the trailer is loaded, the rear stabilizer legs must be deployed prior to opening the pintle hook. Uncouple trailer from vehicle. Engage the 2 handbrakes. Disconnect the intervehicular cable, safety breakaway cable, and safety chains from the towing vehicle. Open the towing vehicle pintle hitch by removing the safety pin and lifting the locking latch. Be careful, the trailer tongue is heavy, up to 420 pounds loaded tongue weight. Use front crank to raise and lower the trailer tongue. If the tongue jack is inoperative, remove the load from the trailer and use 4 or more persons to lift the trailer tongue. To raise the trailer tongue, rotate the trailer jack hand crank so that the lunette ring is clear of the pintle hook. When operating the hand crank, do not force the tongue jack extension beyond the normal operating range, or permanent damage may occur. Install ground rod assembly. Be careful. Improper or no equipment grounding can result in serious electrical shock or death. The best position for the grounding rod is by the front roadside. Remove the grounding rods and ground rod pounder. Use the ground rod pounder to drive the first section of grounding rod into the earth. Connect the ground wire to the grounding rod assembly. Connect the ground wire to the trailer ground stud. Offloading shelter. Take note, this procedure requires 4 personnel and a team leader or spotter to offload the shelter package from the trailer cargo bay. After loosening the cargo bay straps, remove the cargo bay tarp. Unbuckle the 6 cargo net clasps and drop the cargo net to the ground. Remove the cargo bay crossbar and place it away from the immediate work area. After removing the electrical wiring kit transport bag and stake support bag, remove the 2 shelter end caps from the cargo bay and place them about 10 feet from the center point of the shelter. Position 4 team members around the cargo bay end of the trailer. Roll the shelter transport bag 1/2 turn towards the rear of the trailer, then pull it to the edge. Grasp the cargo net with one hand and guide the shelter transport bag into the cargo net. Roll the shelter transport bag to the center of the setup site. Unpacking shelter. Position the shelter so that the long side of the shelter is facing the end cap bags. Stand the shelter up so that the exterior side is facing up. Remove the shelter repair kit, push poles, and cinched shelter. Remove the outer cinch straps and floor. Remove and store the shelter cinch straps. Expand and lift shelter. When lifting hubs, lift from underneath where the hub is connected to the strut. Do not lift the shelter by the struts only. Do not lift by the coated steel wire loops. The outermost exterior lifting hubs and the top of the struts are the only places from which the shelter should be lifted. Position 4 personnel around the shelter perimeter. Find the outermost lifting hub with coated steel wire loops. Make sure that the wind lines are not snagged on any hubs. With both hands on the lifting hubs, lift the shelter off the ground and take 2 short steps backward and then put the shelter down. If any team member feels any resistance, they should yell "Stop," identify the restriction and correct it. Continue to lift and step back until the shelter is fully expanded. Please note, lifting the shelter is performed in 2 stages: lift to waist height and lift to full height. Distribute 4 push poles to the crew. Find the red flags under the interior cover and assign 1 person per flag. Never lift on a keeper that does not have a red flag. Failure to heed this caution could result in damage to the shelter. On command, lift the shelter with one hand and place your prospective poles against the keeper with a red flag. Lift quickly to a vertical position until the 4 push poles are supporting the entire shelter. Take note, 2 crew members are required to always hold the shelter when it is resting on the 4 push poles because it is not totally stable. The team leader must always monitor this operation and should immediately stop progress if there is any sideways motion of the shelter. Identify the 4 additional red-flagged lifting keepers located 4 feet inside the outer keepers. Starting at opposite corners, move the poles inwards to these inside positions while the remaining crew members steady the shelter. Repeat with the remaining corners. The center section of the shelter should now be at waist height, resting on the push poles. Attaching end caps. Attach the end caps before raising the shelter to full height. Remove the end caps from their transport bags and stow the cargo straps in the transport bags. Expand the end caps in the same manner as the main section. Align the red hubs toward the mounting pins on the center section frame. Unroll the 2 cover sides of each end cap. Align both end caps to the 2 open ends of the center section. Lift the red end cap hubs onto pins protruding from the white-colored hubs and insert the pin. Locate the black tabs in the center of both ends of the exterior cover and attach it to the end cap cover, working from the center outwards. Please note, if the hook and loop seam is fastened beyond the grommets, the shelter will not lift properly and internal struts could break. Connect the flap to the grommets sewn in each side of the center section. Attach the seam on the end cap exterior cover to the grommet. Make sure all the seams are smooth in order to prevent leaks. Repeat these same steps to the inner cover. Unzip doors on the end caps to allow access to push poles. Repeat the same steps for the opposite end cap. Raise shelter to full height. If setting up in high winds, position additional personnel along the windward side to hold the wind lines while the shelter is being raised. Never lift on keepers that do not have red flags. Damage to the frame could result. Prior to final lift, all personnel must check that the doors are not caught on any hubs or between struts. A snagged cover will prevent the shelter from lifting to full height. Lift each end cap off the ground slightly and move in towards the center section about 1 foot. Return to the push poles and grasp the bottom of the push pole to lift the shelter to full height. If any resistance is felt, stop immediately to prevent possible damage to the shelter. Lift the shelter until the side walls come to a vertical position. Push the bottom hubs into position with your foot to make sure they are in a vertical position. Secure both end caps to the center section by attaching them from the grommet down to the ground. Repositioning shelter. Place the push poles against the interior keepers with red flags and lift the shelter off the ground. Stop immediately if the bottom of any wall drags on the ground. Return the push poles to the transport bag. Installing floor. Make sure all the inner flaps are pulled in and are laying flat with the Velcro strip facing up. Verify the shelter's center section staking plates are level with the ground. Drive one stake through the staking plate on the primary door side of the shelter. Place the floor inside the shelter by the primary door and unfold the floor. Center the door flap on the floor to the shelter side door. Double-check the fit of the floor with respect to the shelter. Using 2 personnel, start attaching the floor on either side of the door and work in opposite directions. Pull the floor tightly towards the inside of the secondary door to remove any slack or bumps. Drive one stake through each staking plate in the corners of the secondary side of the shelter. Securing shelter. Take note, all wind lines and ground stakes must be utilized, especially during inclement weather conditions. During adverse weather conditions, periodically check the wind lines and stakes. Drive stakes through the remaining staking brackets along both sides of the shelter and into the ground about 4 to 5 feet from the shelter's perimeter. Fully unravel all wind lines and secure to the ground stakes. Secure multiple wind lines to each ground stake. Use the cam lock tensioner to tighten each wind line. Connecting ECU ducts to shelter and trailer. Please note, ensure proper trailer placement alignment from shelter to ensure ducts reach. Remove 2 port caps from the ECU. Loosen the belt securing the ECU duct transport bags and shelter light. Remove 2 ECU duct transport bags from the storage area and remove the ducts from the transport bags. Return the transport bags to the trailer deck. Position the belted end of each duct toward the ECU ports. Identify the return ducts, screen at one end, and place toward the shelter. Attach the air supply duct to the upper ECU port and tighten the belt to secure it in place. Attach the air return duct and lower the ECU port and tighten the belt to secure it in place. To cool the shelter, pull the air supply duct through the shelter supply port and pull the return duct through the shelter port. To heat the shelter, pull the air supply duct through the lower shelter return port and pull the air return duct through the upper shelter supply port. Secure all the ducts to the shelter ports by tightening the belts. Installing power cables from GENSET to shelter. Remove the 25-foot power cables to bring power from the GENSET to the shelter lights and other accessory items. Unscrew the connector weather cover on the power cable by turning the cover counterclockwise to release and lift it. Using the guide slot, align the power cable connector with the J2 or J3 receptacle on the power distribution panel and twist clockwise to lock it into place. Run the power cables through the cable sleeve located in the shelter interior and exterior covers next to the ECU ducts. Take note, the shelter floor has a cable runner built into it for use when a cable is being run to the opposite side of the shelter. Make sure that the cables do not interfere with movement of personnel through the shelter. Lighting. The TMSS medium system includes 2 fluorescent light sets. Arrange the lighting fixtures on the floor. Shelter lights are intended to be daisy-chained together so that one power cable can be used for lighting the shelter. Connect the male connector of the shelter lighting fixture to the PDU or trailer power lead. Connect the male and female connectors from one fixture to the next. Lift the first shelter lighting fixture and connect the clip to the outer looped keeper closest to the PDU power input cable. Level the shelter lighting fixtures to the desired height using the slide strap locks. Lift the second shelter lighting fixture. Stretch power cord from the first shelter lighting fixture to the second shelter lighting fixture. Repeat. Installing Power Distribution Unit, or PDU. The TMSS medium system includes one power distribution unit to route electric power from either the GENSET or a remote power source. PDUs provide a method of distributing power to branch circuits, utility cords, and lighting fixtures in the shelter. Operating in heat mode will draw 18 kilowatts. Operating in the cool mode will draw only 10 kilowatts. Position the PDU close to the space between the trailer and shelter. Connect the 25-foot 60-amp power cable to the J4 30-amp connector on the power distribution panel. Connect the 25-foot 60-amp power cable to the input connector J1 on the PDU. Connect equipment to PDU.